In the wake of one of the most devastating terrorist attacks in modern history, the world turned its attention to the enigmatic figure at the center of it all, Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden Mastermind of September 11th delves deep into the life, motivations, and actions of the man who orchestrated the infamous attacks on the World Trade Center and the Pentagon. With meticulous research and first-hand accounts, this comprehensive account uncovers the evolution of bin Laden from a privileged Saudi youth to the leader of a global jihadist movement. From his early influences to the formation of Al-Qaeda, each chapter sheds light on the factors that shaped his worldview and fueled his desire for violent extremism. As the narrative unfolds, readers are taken on a journey through the pivotal moments in bin Laden's life, including his role in the Soviet-Afghan War, the planning and execution of the September 11th attacks, and the subsequent global manhunt that ultimately led to his demise. It's a critical examination of the legacy left behind by bin Laden and the ongoing threat of terrorism in the 21st century. Through in-depth analysis and expert commentary, readers will gain a deeper understanding of the complex socio-political factors that continue to fuel extremism around the world. Osama bin Laden Mastermind of September 11th is a timely and essential read for anyone seeking to unravel the mysteries surrounding one of the most notorious figures in modern history and understand the ongoing struggle against terrorism in the contemporary world. Chapter 1: The Rise of Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden's story begins in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia, where he was born into a wealthy and influential family in 1957. As the son of Mohammed bin Laden, a construction magnate with close ties to the Saudi royal family, Osama enjoyed a privileged upbringing that afforded him access to the best education and opportunities money could buy. However, despite his privileged background, bin Laden's early years were marked by a deep sense of dissatisfaction and disillusionment with the world around him. From a young age, he was exposed to the teachings of conservative Islamic scholars who preached a strict interpretation of the faith, instilling in him a fervent belief in the need to defend Islam from perceived threats. As bin Laden came of age, he became increasingly drawn to the ideology of Islamism, which called for the establishment of a pan-Islamic caliphate governed by strict Sharia law. Inspired by the teachings of prominent Islamist thinkers like Sayyid Qutb, bin Laden began to see himself as a warrior for the cause of Islam, destined to lead the Muslim world in a holy war against its enemies. This newfound sense of purpose led bin Laden to join the Mujahideen in their fight against the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan in the 1980s. It was here that he first gained prominence as a charismatic and resourceful leader, using his family's wealth to fund the resistance efforts and establish himself as a key figure in the jihadist movement. By the time the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan in 1989, bin Laden had emerged as a hero in the eyes of many Muslims around the world, revered for his role in driving out the infidel invaders. But for bin Laden, the struggle was far from over. It was only the beginning of his quest to rid the Muslim world of all foreign influence and establish a global Islamic state. As the 1990s dawned, bin Laden set his sights on new targets, turning his attention to the United States and its allies in the Middle East. Fueled by a deep-seated hatred of Western imperialism and a desire to restore the glory of Islam, bin Laden began to plot a series of increasingly audacious terrorist attacks that would shake the world to its core. And thus, the stage was set for the events that would catapult Osama bin Laden from obscurity to infamy and forever alter the course of history. Chapter 2: Early Influences and Radicalization. Osama bin Laden's early influences played a crucial role in shaping his worldview and eventual radicalization. Growing up in the wealthy and conservative milieu of Saudi Arabia, bin Laden was exposed to a mix of traditional Islamic teachings and the political upheavals of the region. One significant influence on bin Laden's early life was his family's close ties to the Saudi royal family. Through his father, Mohammed bin Laden, a prominent businessman with connections to the ruling elite, Osama was introduced to the corridors of power at a young age. However, despite his privileged upbringing, bin Laden harbored a deep-seated resentment towards what he perceived as the corruption and decadence of the Saudi monarchy. Another formative influence on bin Laden's worldview was the rise of political Islam in the broader Middle East. In the 1960s and 1970s, movements advocating for the establishment of Islamic states gained momentum across the region, inspired by the writings of figures like Sayyid Qutb and the Iranian Revolution of 1979. These developments resonated deeply with bin Laden, who saw in them a potential solution to the perceived moral decay of Muslim societies. Bin Laden's time studying economics and management at King Abdulaziz University in Jeddah also played a role in his radicalization. It was during his university years that he began to immerse himself in Islamist literature and engage with like-minded students who shared his vision of a purified Islamic society. It was also during this time that he first encountered the teachings of Abdullah Azzam, a Palestinian scholar who would become a mentor and spiritual guide to bin Laden in the years to come. However, perhaps the most significant influence on bin Laden's radicalization was the Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979. Like many Muslims around the world, bin Laden was outraged by the Soviet Union's aggression against a fellow Muslim country and saw it as a clear example of the West's hostility towards Islam. Determined to defend his faith and support his Afghan brothers in their struggle against the godless communists, bin Laden heeded the call to jihad and traveled to Afghanistan to join the Mujahideen. It was on the battlefields of Afghanistan that bin Laden's radicalization reached its zenith. Fueled by a sense of righteousness and a fervent belief in the righteousness of his cause, bin Laden threw himself wholeheartedly into the fight against the Soviets, using his family's wealth and connections to fund the Mujahideen's efforts. It was also during this time that he began to form the connections and alliances that would lay the groundwork for the formation of Al-Qaeda and his future role as a global jihadist leader. By the time the Soviets withdrew from Afghanistan in 1989, bin Laden had been transformed from a wealthy Saudi businessman into a hardened warrior and committed jihadist. His experiences in Afghanistan had solidified his belief in the necessity of armed struggle to defend Islam and had laid the groundwork for the global terrorist network that would come to be known as Al-Qaeda. His next video is coming soon. Thanks for watching.